He didn't lose his empire in a courtroom, he didn't lose it in a fight, he lost it with a signature. Because he trusted one man more than himself, they called it the Empire of Trust, not because it was written on buildings or papers, but because people said it quietly, with respect, when his name appeared in a room. Ethan Crow, a calm voice, steady hands, a man who looked others in the eyes and listened longer than he spoke. He built factories near rivers and highways, steel and glass, machines humming like loyal workers. He owned cargo ships that crossed warm oceans, white yachts that waited in silent marinas, friends in every city, partners at every table, dinners that lasted deep into the night, laughter soft, promises softer, and through all of it Ethan believed one thing: trust was stronger than contracts, trust was faster than lawyers, trust was cleaner than fear. He had learned that early, when he was young and broke and hopeful, when a stranger once paid his rent with a handshake and a smile. That moment stayed inside him, shaped him, guided him. Years passed, money came. Power followed, but the belief stayed untouched, until the day he met Lucas Hale. Lucas spoke easily, moved smoothly, never rushed, always agreed before you finished your thought. He dressed simple, smiled often, said he admired Ethan's way of doing business, said trust was rare now, said loyalty was dying. Ethan listened, nodded, felt that old warmth return. They started small, one factory, shared responsibility, shared signatures. Lucas handled papers, Ethan handled vision. It worked perfectly. Profits grew, employees felt safe, suppliers paid on time, journalists wrote clean stories, friends congratulated him, told him he had found the right partner. Lucas never pushed, never demanded, always said you decide, you always decide. That made Ethan relax. He signed where Lucas pointed, glanced but did not read deeply, because he trusted the man more than the ink. Years stacked like coins, more factories, more ships, more accounts, everything placed under one structure, one holding. For efficiency, Lucas said, for protection, Lucas explained, and Ethan agreed, because nothing had ever gone wrong, because trust had always paid him back, because doubt felt like betrayal. One evening on a balcony above the city lights, Lucas raised a glass and said, to empire builders, to brothers, to trust, and Ethan smiled, unaware that every signature was a door closing quietly behind him, unaware that ownership had shifted piece by piece, line by line, unnoticed. The empire stood tall, but its foundation no longer carried his name, and the night air felt calm, almost kind, as if warning him softly. But Ethan did not hear it yet, not then, not while the city below still glowed with his reflection. The first sign came quietly, like dust settling where no one looks, a delayed payment, a polite email, nothing alarming. Lucas explained it with calm words: restructuring, timing, market flow. Phrases smooth and harmless. Ethan accepted them, because panic felt unnatural to him. Because the empire had survived storms before. Meetings continued, smiles remained, but chairs shifted slightly. Assistants he did not know appeared, documents arrived already prepared, tabs marked, signatures waiting. Lucas spoke more often now, just guiding, just helping. Ethan felt tired, travel drained him, years of motion catching up. He allowed Lucas to lead more, trusted him to protect the whole structure. After all, it was built on trust. One morning Ethan tried to access an account and found it restricted. A small issue, support will fix it, Lucas said, and it was fixed, but not by Ethan's hand. Days later a factory report came signed by a board Ethan did not remember approving. Lucas laughed softly. You did approve, last quarter, remember? Ethan did not remember, but memory can blur. Success moves fast. Doubt again felt like betrayal. Employees began asking questions quietly. Ownership changes, management shifts. Ethan reassured them, told them nothing had changed, because that was what he needed to believe. At a conference his name appeared smaller on the screen, Lucas's larger, central. Applause still came, but felt distant, like sound through glass. Contracts now arrived thicker, language colder, clauses nested inside clauses. Lucas summarized them with confidence. It's standard, it protects us, protects you. Ethan signed, because stopping felt harder than continuing. Because saying no required energy he no longer had. One evening he went to his marina. The yacht was gone, relocated for maintenance, he was told. The word relocated echoed strangely. At home letters waited, banks, boards, formal tones, changes in authority, voting rights adjusted, temporary measures, always temporary. Lucas assured him, trust me, just trust me, and Ethan did, even as something inside him tightened, not fear, more like confusion. Like waking in a familiar room where furniture has moved slightly overnight, still your room, but no longer responding to your steps. He stood at his window watching traffic flow, thinking about that old handshake from years ago, wondering when trust had changed its shape, or when he had stopped watching where he placed it. The empire still stood, factories still worked, ships still crossed oceans, but Ethan felt himself moving around the edges of it, like a guest in his own creation, smiling politely, waiting for permission he never used to need. The day everything shifted had no drama, no raised voices, no broken glass, just a meeting room with soft lights and clean water on the table. Ethan arrived early, sat alone, watched reflections move across the glass wall. When Lucas entered he did not smile, not cold, just distant, like someone already thinking of the next place. Papers were placed carefully, votes recorded, numbers precise, the board spoke in calm tones, restructuring complete, leadership transition finalized. Ethan listened, waiting for his turn to speak, but it never came. His name appeared on a screen. Beside words like former and advisory and non-voting, Lucas finally looked at him and said, "This is for stability, you understand?" Ethan nodded slowly, because arguing felt unreal, like protesting gravity. Afterward security walked him out politely, respectful, apologetic, but firm. His access card no longer worked, his phone filled with notifications he could not answer, accounts frozen, assets reassigned. All legal, all clean, all done with his own signatures. He drove home through streets he had helped rebuild, past buildings funded by his vision, his name nowhere visible. At the house the locks responded to another code. A manager met him with sympathy, personal items already boxed, temporary accommodation arranged, its standard procedure, nothing personal. The words followed him like shadows. By nightfall Ethan sat on a bench near a closed cafe, one suitcase beside him, city noise unchanged, people laughing, moving, living, unaware that an empire had just erased its founder. Without a sound, he checked his balance, zeros where life once lived, credit declined, calls unanswered, messages unread. Lucas had vanished into official distance, unreachable by design. The trust that once opened every door now explained why none would open. Ethan slept little that night, wrapped in borrowed quiet, staring at passing lights, realizing the truth with painful clarity. The empire of trust had never collapsed. It had simply decided he was no longer needed, and it used his belief as the key. When morning came he stood, adjusted his coat, and walked forward with nothing left but memory, and a question he could not yet answer: how does a man rebuild when trust has taken everything but his breath? Morning arrived without ceremony, pale light over concrete and glass. Ethan washed his face in a public restroom, looked at his reflection longer than usual, no anger there yet, just quiet disbelief. He walked through familiar streets now indifferent to him, cafes where his meetings once filled tables, offices where guards no longer nodded. He tried old numbers, friends who once answered on the first ring. Some did not pick up, some spoke carefully. Lawyers will call you, this is complicated, better not be involved. Voices polite, distant, like reading lines written for them. By noon hunger reminded him he was human again, not a title, not a signature, just a man. He bought a simple meal, counted bills slowly, each one suddenly heavy. He thought of factories waking up without him, machines running perfectly fine. Loyalty never belonged to him, only to systems. In the afternoon he visited a river where the first factory once stood. Water moved the same way it always had, unbothered by ownership. A worker passed and did not recognize him, and that hurt more than the boardroom. As evening fell Ethan found a small room, cash for one night, thin walls, clean sheets, no view. He sat on the bed and finally allowed silence to speak. He replayed moments. Signatures, smiles, words like brother and trust and protection, none of them lies, just incomplete truths. He understood now that trust without awareness is a gift without wrapping, easily taken, easily redirected. Sleep came lightly, dreams fragmented, flashes of glass towers and locked doors. When he woke the next morning something had shifted, not hope yet, but clarity. The empire was gone, but so was the illusion. And in its absence a different question formed, not how to reclaim what was lost, but what remains when titles disappear. Ethan stood, straightened his jacket, and stepped outside, unnoticed, unprotected, but still standing, learning for the first time how quiet strength sounds when it has no witnesses. Days began to blur into a simple rhythm. Years later the city still moved fast, towers rose and fell, names changed on glass walls, but some things moved slower now, deliberately. Ethan's work remained quiet, almost invisible to headlines, yet deeply rooted. People who passed through carried the principles onward, questioning systems, refusing blind shortcuts, building with awareness. Sometimes Ethan was asked to speak, not about success, but about loss, and he spoke simply. About attention, about reading what you sign, about trust as something living, never symbolic. He never mentioned Lucas by name, not out of kindness, but because the lesson was larger than one man. Power reveals what systems allow, not what individuals intend. One evening after a long walk Ethan returned to the river where his first factory once stood. The building was gone now, replaced by something new. He stood there calmly, hands in his pockets, no regret, only perspective. The empire he lost had taught him what wealth cannot protect, the one he built afterward taught him what cannot be taken. He understood now that trust is strongest when it can be questioned, that loyalty without clarity is fragile, and that ownership means responsibility, not control. As night settled he turned away from the water and walked back into the city, not as a founder, not as a victim, but as a participant, aware, present, grounded. The empire of trust no longer existed as a structure, but it lived on as a lesson, passed quietly from person to person, like a warning spoken gently, and a promise kept honestly. And as Ethan disappeared into the crowd, there was no need for an ending, because the story had completed its purpose. It no longer needed to be told loudly, only remembered carefully.